The movie begins in an American prison. We're shown an inmate doing pull-ups on a bar. At that moment, guards arrive and tell Sims he's going home. He grabs his clothes and walks out into freedom. That's when we realize that Calvin Sims, that's our main character's name, is actually a little person, just 1 meter tall. Outside, he's met by an old friend, Percy, who kindly helps open the door for him.
Percy! I'm sorry, Cal!
On the way out of prison, Percy tells him about a new job the boss has given him. All they need to do is steal a diamond. For that, they'll get $100,000.
100 G's. 100 G's?
Meanwhile, we're shown a guy named Daryl, who's asking a waiter to help him at the right moment. His beloved Vanessa arrives, and they begin their dinner. They recall how a year ago Daryl proposed to Vanessa, and he still hasn't given her the diamond that's supposed to be on her ring. Vanessa says she has a surprise. He really thought she got knocked up and screamed with joy. All the guests clapped, and at that moment, the prepared waiter ran in and began to sing. Everyone's confused, the joy fades quickly, and it turns out she isn't pregnant. She just got promoted at work. This really upset Daryl, as he's long dreamed of becoming a father. Our little thief and his buddy arrive at the job. Percy pulls out a Glock with a bent barrel and decides to storm the store, but little Calvin is wise beyond his years and says they need to act quietly and carefully. He doesn't want to go to prison. They enter the bank. Rather, Percy enters the bank with a large bag, inside of which Calvin is hiding. While Percy distracts the consultant, the short guy secretly climbs out of the bag and crawls under the counter with the diamond. He drills a circle and carefully pulls out the huge diamond. Seems like the job is done. Now they just need to leave quickly and unnoticed. Unfortunately, a woman notices them. She heard the barking of her huge guard dog coming from the bag. Yeah, I don't know how the dog got in there either. She starts screaming, and at that moment, the consultant sees the diamond is missing and quickly calls the cops. The two prepare to make a run for it, but the car spins in place. Someone blocked the wheel, so they just have to run.
Oh, Percy! You forgot something! What? Me!
The cops question the old lady, and she says it was 2 African-American men. As soon as the partner hears this, he immediately runs after them. 1.5 criminals decide to hide in a small grocery store and split up. At that moment, the police arrive. At the same time, our beloved couple, Daryl and Vanessa, come into the store. Calvin doesn't think long and decides to hide the diamond in Vanessa's purse. One of the cops mistakes a guy and starts beating up a random customer. And do you know why? Yep. Exactly, because he fit the description. When the police realize their mistake, they leave the store. Percy asks Calvin, "Where's the diamond?" Calvin tells him that he tossed it. They decide to follow the couple in a taxi to get the diamond back. The family goes home, where they're met by Vanessa's father, who's staying with them because she doesn't want to send him to a nursing home. The robbers are already outside, and Calvin climbs onto Percy's shoulders and looks in the window. He sees the bag. Now they need to figure out how to get inside the house. As usual, Percy wants to do it the old-school way with his crooked pistol, but Calvin calms him down again and says he doesn't want to go to jail. Then Percy notices a woman with a stroller and suggests that Calvin dress up as a baby and infiltrate the family undercover. Calvin is against it.
Nah.
But Calvin dresses up like a baby and lies down in a dog basket.
Drop you. You drop me, and I'ma drop you.
He's placed in front of the young couple's door. Percy rings the doorbell and runs to hide behind a big tree. Suddenly, the dog, the true owner of the basket, appears, and he decides to relieve himself right on Calvin. Daryl opens the door and sees the baby. Calvin immediately gets into character, and they carry him inside, then change and wash him, because thanks to the dog's tricks, the smell wasn't great. They decide to put a diaper on the baby, and are seriously surprised.
Whoa!
What is it? Whoa!
Vanessa suggests taking Calvin to an orphanage and starts calling them, but luckily they don't work on weekends, so she decides to call the police. In response to this, the fake baby starts crying and coughing. The couple thinks the baby is sick and takes him to a doctor. The exam gets interesting. The doctor removes Calvin's shirt, and everyone is shocked by the tattoo on his shoulder of the 82nd Airborne Division. And his teeth look like those of a 40-year-old man. The doctor says the baby is healthy, but they absolutely must take his temperature. Once again, Vanessa wants to turn Calvin over to the police, but Daryl talks her out of it and suggests they keep the baby until Monday. In the end, while the couple is discussing the baby's future, The little guy has already grabbed the purse and is heading to the door. Unfortunately, a police officer catches him. Vanessa decides to explain everything about how he was left at their door. At that moment, Calvin calls Vanessa Mom,
Mama!
which melts her heart, and she takes him back. At this time, Percy is reporting to the boss. The guy's in big trouble. He still hasn't delivered the diamond. If he doesn't do it soon, he's finished. Calvin starts feeling at home, and when he gets hungry, he decides to grab a cookie from Grandpa. But the old man gets mad and takes it back. Calvin isn't the kind to give up easily, so he decides to mess with Grandpa. He starts rubbing the cookie in his armpits, stuffing it into different places. Grandpa is seriously out of luck.
Look at that little bite to it.
The couple's friends come over and bring a bunch of baby stuff. They meet Calvin and are all a bit shocked. He looks unusual. One of the women's boyfriends comes over to greet Calvin.
Give me 5.
Ouch!
And another guy playfully pokes Calvin's nose.
Oh, you got my nose. I got my nose!
Vanessa tries some baby clothes on Calvin, but he notices a busty blonde and asks to be held. The woman assumes the baby is hungry and says he needs to be breastfed. But his joy doesn't last.
These.
Oh, he must have been breastfed.
Are you sure you should do that?
He gets what he wants, just not from the woman he expected. He barely escapes. Later, Vanessa's guests leave. One of the women tries to give the baby a goodbye kiss, but Calvin seizes the opportunity and kisses her like a pro. She's in shock. The parents send Calvin to take a bath, and Vanessa offers to join him, which makes Calvin super happy. But it turns out she meant Daryl. His joy disappears instantly. Following the doctor's recommendation, the couple decides to take Calvin's temperature. There's just one important detail. It needs to be done rectally. He resists as much as he can, but it's useless. After measuring his temperature, they put the little thief into a crib, and he accidentally falls asleep. In the middle of the night, when the couple is asleep, our hero realizes it's the perfect time to steal the diamond. He quickly finds the purse, and inside it, the diamond. He calls Percy, but of course, Grandpa wakes up and brings out a rifle. The old man senses that something is off. Calvin quickly gets back into character and pretends to be a baby. Grandpa tries to explain everything to Daryl, but nobody believes him. They think he's going crazy. Daryl is moved by the situation and decides to feed the baby. He promises to be the best dad ever and to take him to the park. Calvin is so touched by these words that for a moment he really wants to be a regular kid, to live in this family and not worry about adult life. Vanessa watches this and starts giggling, saying they're drinking her friend's breast milk. That night, the couple decides to have sex, while Calvin watches everything. In the morning, Vanessa wakes up and somehow that little rascal is in her bed. She's surprised Daryl managed to go 2 rounds.
Twice in one night.
Twice?
The next morning, Grandpa walks into the kitchen and changes the channel from cartoons to the news, where they're showing Calvin as a wanted suspect. Calvin starts yelling to distract Grandpa. Vanessa changes the channel and Grandpa notices nothing. The little thief starts messing with Grandpa again. He steals his breakfast. Vanessa doesn't pay attention and makes jokes. Grandpa is exhausted from all this. He's been hungry for days. Daryl joins them for breakfast and says Vanessa's father has gone mad. He accused the baby of being a criminal and pointed a shotgun at him during the night. Vanessa agrees. She leaves for work, and Daryl stays home with the baby. He needs to feed him, but Calvin doesn't want baby food, and a plan comes to his mind. He tricks Dad into playing hide and seek. Suddenly, things go south for Daryl. He unexpectedly gets hit in the head with a frying pan. Calvin grabs the purse and tries to run away, but Vanessa had forgotten her purse at home and returned to get it. Calvin quickly props Daryl up on the couch and hides the diamond again. Vanessa grabs her purse and suggests the boys go to the park to get some fresh air. The guys head to the park. Daryl brings sports gear, and they start with baseball. But again, it doesn't go well for Daryl. He keeps getting hit in the crotch by the ball, the bat, even a flying toy plane. Daryl meets his friends in the park and leaves Calvin at the playground with the other kids. Calvin quickly takes over the playground. He starts hustling, playing dice for money, and demanding fees from the kids for using the playground. Suddenly, Percy shows up and calls for Calvin. He says he came for the diamond, but it's in the ducky-patterned bag. He grabs the wrong one and ends up with a bunch of dirty diapers. Angry moms start chasing him, and Percy runs off. Time to head home. The guys walk up to the car, and Calvin gets a brilliant idea. What if I steal Dad's car? With his squeaky baby voice, he asks for the keys. He hits Daryl on the leg. Daryl gives him a toy bat. Calvin isn't satisfied, hits him again in the leg, and finally, Daryl gives him the keys. The little guy takes off in the car. Daryl thinks criminals have kidnapped Calvin. He tries to flag down a ride and immediately gets lucky. A car stops. Behind the wheel is a mother of many children, and without hesitation, she decides to help chase down the car. After all, it's her motherly duty. Because of Calvin's reckless driving, the cops spot him and start a pursuit. He has to pull a hard drift and turn at an intersection. Meanwhile, the woman driving Daryl decides to change her baby's diaper mid-drive. She climbs into the back seat and throws a leg over the wheel, nearly causing an accident. More and more police cars join the chase. Eventually, they manage to stop the little thief, but Calvin is clever. He tricks them. The little guy jumps into the baby seat, and the cops assume the suspect escaped. Daryl arrives and grabs Calvin in his arms, deeply moved. He even says a touching line.
He's okay. I'm sorry, man.
Which makes Calvin pause and think. Percy, meanwhile, brings the bag to his boss, claiming the diamond is inside. But instead of the diamond, the boss finds baby formula and dirty diapers. Furious, he gives Percy one last chance. If he doesn't find the diamond, the goons will kill him. Daryl takes Calvin to a hockey game. Calvin retrieves the diamond from the bag and hides it in his mouth to sneak it out unnoticed. Daryl catches on and asks the baby to open his mouth. Not wanting to blow his cover, Calvin swallows the small diamond. Bored, our hero decides to have some fun. First, he drinks the beer of a big guy sitting nearby. Then he says, "Nice ass," about a waitress. The waitress ends up pouring beer all over Daryl. The fat guy notices his beer is gone and picks a fight with Daryl. Daryl is lucky. Two hockey players crash into each other, drawing attention away. Eventually, Calvin throws a cup of ice at one of the players. A big goon is ready to attack Daryl, but Calvin finally steps in to defend his dad. He jumps on the player and bites him on the ear. That evening, the parents decide to throw a birthday party for the baby. The next day, they organize a backyard celebration and invite an entertainer. Calvin is bored at the party and decides to mess with the entertainer. He tells him that his job is complete crap. The performer takes off his mask, and it turns out to be Rob Schneider. Calvin picks a fight, rips off the dinosaur's tail, and climbs inside the costume.
That was a cheap shot!
Meanwhile, Grandpa is having lunch at a cafe. He sees a news report about a jewel thief, and guess what? It's Calvin. Grandpa jumps up and runs home. We jump back to the backyard. One of the dads suggests playing American football, kids and dads together. Daryl gets knocked out right at the start. The buff dad's team always wins. When people start talking about how rough the game is, the big guy nearly starts a fight. But then Calvin joins the game. Thanks to his short height, he dodges everyone with ease. He beats the bully badly, really badly. Oh, they'll remember that game. Time to bring out the cake. Calvin hears everyone's cheers and well wishes, and he starts to tear up. He's never experienced warmth and care like this in his life. Even Grandpa, who used to hate him, suddenly decides to give him a stuffed teddy bear. Looks like the old man is up to something. After the birthday party, Percy shows up at the house. He says he came to get his son. Daryl gets angry, thinking Percy abandoned his kid. Percy gets smacked again. And right at that moment, some gangsters are secretly watching the scene. After the party, Calvin starts having digestive issues. He decides to chug an entire bottle of laxative. Trouble comes fast, and suddenly he desperately needs a toilet, but doesn't make it in time and ends up doing his business in front of everyone. Vanessa changes his diaper and discovers the diamond Calvin had swallowed earlier. She assumes it's a surprise gift from Daryl, since her ring still doesn't have a diamond. She thanks him endlessly, and the couple heads out to a restaurant, leaving Calvin with Grandpa. But as soon as the parents leave, Grandpa's mood shifts dramatically. He starts questioning Calvin about the theft, and Calvin confesses everything. He says the gangsters are after him, and if he doesn't return the diamond, they'll kill him. But Grandpa isn't moved at all, and a wild fight breaks out. Meanwhile, at dinner, the couple decides to adopt Calvin. When they come back home, they see the brawl. They yell at Grandpa and call staff from the nursing home. He tries to prove Calvin is a criminal and begs them to check the teddy bear he gave him, because it contains a hidden camera. Vanessa puts Calvin to bed and heads to the bathroom. This is the perfect moment to steal the diamond. That night, Daryl decides to check the teddy bear's footage. He finds out Calvin isn't a baby and that he was the one who stole the diamond. He tells Vanessa, But Calvin and the diamond are already gone. The partners are celebrating. They completed the mission successfully. Now they're filthy rich. But Percy is warned. The gangsters are on their way to Calvin's adoptive family's house. The gangsters show up at the doorstep. They demand the diamond. They grab Daryl. And that's when Calvin unexpectedly appears. His conscience has awakened. He can't leave Daryl with nothing. Daryl had become like a father to him. So he came back. The gang leader orders Calvin to be taken upstairs, so he won't see what's about to happen to his adoptive dad. When the lights go out, Calvin smashes the goon on the head, but the thug is so dumb he doesn't even realize who hit him. Daryl seizes the chance and escapes. The gangsters split up. Calvin takes down another one using a toy rocket and a rubber bat. Meanwhile, the boss with a gun finds Daryl, but ends up getting beaten with rubber gloves. Daryl tries to shoot, but the gangster quickly grabs the gun from him. At the same time, the gangsters recover and head toward Calvin. Now they know what's going on. By the way, in that scene, they kind of look familiar. Naturally, Calvin isn't afraid. Using a hanging diaper, he delivers some serious punishment. First to one thug, then to the second. Then the boss and Daryl come into the kitchen. The boss sees Calvin playing with a toy airplane. He orders him to drop it. The hint is clear. The little guy launches the toy and hits the mark, just like he did with Daryl earlier. Right at that moment, the police burst into the house. The gangsters are arrested. Calvin, after everything that's happened, decides to turn over a new leaf. He gives the diamond to the police, and the officer tells them the good news. There's a $100,000 reward for returning the diamond. Calvin then tells Daryl he's a great guy, that he had fun, and that Daryl was like a father to him. They shake hands. Calvin is ready to leave, but Daryl offers him a bottle of warm milk, and they head to the bar.